I'm Kathryn Brenne, the owner of the Academy of Fine Sewing and Design. I write for Vogue Pattern magazine, and today we're going to look at this leather toggle that I designed for Vogue Pattern. It appeared in the October-November issue 2011, and it's quite simple to do. Some of the supplies you'll need, this is a piece of lambskin leather. I have some rubber cement, just the type that's available at the stationery store with a brush in the lid. I have a glue stick, also available from the stationery store, a pair of small scissors, and a rotary cutter. This is the pattern, and the pattern is approximately 5 inches long, and this will depend on the thickness of your leather. If you have a thinner leather, you'll want to create a pattern that's slightly longer, so doing a sample first is always a good idea. And at the bottom, it's about 1 3/4 inches wide. So I've cut out of the leather a triangle, and then for the fastener of the toggle, I've just cut a little rectangle. This edge here is 1 inch long. All other 3 sides are 3/4 of an inch long. You could also make it square, any shape that you like. So just 2 pattern pieces. And what we're going to do is begin by just gluing a little bit of the leather together with some rubber cement. And we're going to cut a couple of really long strips using the rotary cutter that will be used as the loop and to fasten the toggle on the other side. So if your rubber cement is new, it tends to be kind of liquid. Just let it sit for a few minutes until it gets tacky, and then you can just glue those 2 pieces together. Using the rotary cutter then, and here's a little sample. I've cut strips that are a fat 1/8 of an inch wide, and those are what we're going to use for our loop. So you can do that with your rotary cutter. The nice thing about the rubber cement, it stays flexible. It doesn't dry hard. The next thing we're going to do is take the triangle that we made, and we're just going to test out how it's going to roll up and the thickness of our toggle. We don't want it to be too thick. This is about perfect. And we don't want it to be too thin that it's not going to work as a closure. I'm just going to put a little hole in the end of the triangle. And I'm going to put, and I've marked it on my pattern here, a couple of little holes just down a little ways, and you'll see in a minute that those are going to be used to feed that little strip of leather that we just cut. Next, we're going to put a little bit of rubber cement onto the triangular piece. When you're using the rubber cement, you don't want to put too much on, because there is always a chance that it will bleed through to the right side of the leather and stain it. And if you get rubber cement on the other side of the leather, it rolls off easily. If you were doing this out of suede, you want to be careful because it can stain the suede. But with leather, the excess rubber cement will just roll off. Now we're going to roll this up tightly. And as you're rolling it up, you want to make sure that it's centered, that one side of the toggle doesn't end up being slightly wider than the other. Now I'm stopping just before those little holes that I cut. I'm going to take the strip of leather that I've made previously and just cut it at a real point. Working from the right side of the toggle, I'm going to fit that strip into those little holes that I've cut. And by having that point on your leather, you'll be able to pull it through a little bit easier. You don't want those holes to be too big. So I'm going from the right side through to the wrong side. There we go. And I just want to pull that through and sort of center it. There we go. So we don't want those holes too big that this is going to be loose inside of there. Then I'll continue rolling. Pull that end over, and remember we made a hole at the end. These ends are now going to pull through that hole at the end. We want to go from the right side through to the wrong side. So that's going to pull through. Let me just wrap this around here. So we're going to tighten this up. There we go. So you can see here, as I pull that up, it's pulling that end around, and I'm going to do the same with the other side of this piece of leather. Again, you don't want that hole to be too big. I'll just use the end of the scissors to poke it through. There we go. There, and we have our toggle. I'm just going to pull that tight. There we go. Make sure that it's centered. There. So here's our leather toggle. Next, it can be attached to a piece of fabric. So with our little end piece, I'm going to put a little bit of glue stick on there. With leather, you can't really use pins, so there's no way of adhering this to the fabric. So we're going to position our toggle at center front. And that's just enough glue stick to stick to the fabric. Next, I'll just sew on the sewing machine around the edges of my square to adhere it to the fabric. This is what we end up with. So on the one side, we have the toggle that we just made sewn to the fabric. I've just done a stitch here just so that it's not loose and floppy, and I took that by hand over top of that loop that's holding the toggle to the fabric. On the other side, we just have the simple loop that we cut out of leather, and again, I've stitched it to the fabric. Thank you for watching. My name's Kathryn Brenne. I'm the owner of the Academy of Fine Sewing and Design, and I have a sewing leather CD. For more information on everything about sewing with leather, you can visit my website, finesewing.com.